Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning License and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and posted on the website at the end of the next business day, barring no technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask any questions and comments on the agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone else who wishes to has spoken. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, either at the table or standing up. Identify themselves and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until 1 p.m. Tuesday. I will now call to order the regular meeting of the Planning, License, and Development Committee and declare a quorum present. The minute takers participating remotely this evening. Committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder or turn your microphone on. I thought she would walk in now and I did all the reading.
She's hanging out outside.
Yeah. Item number 1 on our agenda tonight was a memorandum from Councilor Robert Williams, policy on discharge of fireworks. Councilor Williams, would you like to lead it off?
Sure. This is really just a continuation of the discussion on fireworks that we've been having over, well, really the past several years, and was precipitated by, last year we had 4 commercial fireworks displays at Alumni Field, which to me is probably too many to be having in one place. It has a negative effect. I mean, everybody likes the color and celebration of fireworks, but when it's a very frequent thing. There's negative effects in terms of noise pollution, air pollution. It harms the local habitat and water. Animals get disturbed, especially sensitive dogs and horses, wild animals as well, bats and birds. And there's also, we have concerns for people who have autism or potentially PTSD. And so to have so many fireworks events in a single neighborhood, rather than perhaps spreading them around or having alternative events, like light shows or drone shows, something like that, I feel is really too much to ask of neighborhoods. And so what I'm seeking is ways to spread the burden. And so I hope today's conversation will lead us in that direction.
And we do, and I do admit there are some concerns because most of those happen in Ward 4. I get most of the phone calls after the fireworks, and it's always somebody that has a child on the autism spectrum, has somebody with PTSD, or a sensitive dog. So it's an issue we should discuss. Is staff going to speak to this?
Yes, Chief Martin as well as Fire Marshal Wood are available to speak this evening.
Please just give your name and rank for the...
Good evening. Rick Wood, Fire Marshal and Building Official.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I did want to kind of add a couple of comments. One of the things to kind of keep in mind that isn't well known by most of the public is that oftentimes what we deem commercial shows are actually with permissible fireworks. So 2 out of the 4 shows at Alumni Field this year actually were consumer fireworks shows that were put on by a commercial vendor. So those are the same fireworks that you can go and purchase, and under our Article 42 can be used at people's houses. So there are sometimes it's based on the cost, and so sometimes those shows are based on a sponsor, and it's based on what the sponsor can put forth. And so sometimes you'll find that out of the 4 shows at Alumni this year, the July 4th show and the First Responder show were the 2 shows that used commercial fireworks. The other 2 shows were all consumer fireworks.
Just so you know, historically, we've had applications and approved them for other locations, like Keene Country Club. There was one year, there were 3 different weddings that had fireworks there. Stonewall Farm had an event, a corporate event that had fireworks over there. So we're not just talking about one place, Alumni Field. It can move around to other places.
Yeah, that's, certainly that's worth, exploring. I just wanted the committee to be sure that they understood that sometimes when we think it's a commercial show, it actually is consumer fireworks, which fall under the definition of our Article 42, Chapter 42, and the changes that this group, along with the rest of the council, made in early 2023. So those restrictions are in play. And those are the same restrictions that a homeowner or anyone else. The country club, for example, if they do a wedding show, they would follow into this as long as they used consumer fireworks that they would purchase at a local venue that anyone can purchase. If they followed the ordinance, there would be no requirement. So I don't know if those shows were prior to this ordinance in March of '23 or what, but I know this year the only ones I'm aware of were at the 4 at Alumni Field.
Just a question, could you explain to me the distinction between commercial and consumer fireworks?
Certainly. So there's 2 different regulations in New Hampshire. You got RSA 160B and 160C. 160B covers what is considered commercial fireworks. The definition is really based on the amount of explosive material in the firework. In 160C, which is the consumer side, you can't have more than, forgive me if I don't get it right, but it's like 130 micrograms of the black powder. You can get 100 milligrams if it's a smoke-producing device. So there's 3 different numbers, but the definition is part of the statute. So it's small quantities of the amount of explosive charge that's part of the firework. That's what the distinction is.
Please.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Haas.
I must admit, I did not attend all the shows. For anybody who might have, was there a perceived difference between commercial and consumer events, or are they, the consumer is large enough and the commercial small enough that it really doesn't make a difference? Anybody have an idea, a feeling that attended the shows? I'm seeing nobody remembers.
I didn't attend the shows, but I certainly can offer a little bit of comment if you'd like. The main difference is the height of the shows. The consumer fireworks are designed to be prepackaged for the most part, although New Hampshire does offer what's called reloadable shells, as long as they meet those requirements. That changed several years ago. Those are limited in size. So the size drives how high the discharge goes. Typically, a 1-inch shell has a 70-foot clearance. So when you start getting in bigger sizes of shells, there's larger clearance requirements. The difference from a show perspective and a regulatory perspective is on the commercial show, you need a license. On a non-commercial show, you don't. On a commercial show, there's fall zones and all kinds of other requirements because they're clearly designed for the public. And on the consumer side, there is no such thing other than what we have in our regulation.
Andrew, please.
Thank you. What authority does, how much leeway do we as a city have to regulate when and where fireworks shows can happen? Just looking at the permit, it's from the fire marshal's office, and I know those are, form style permits, but like what enabling actions do we have as a city to regulate when and where and how many?
So good question. It depends on the kind of show. So in New Hampshire, under 160C, we do have the authority to determine whether or not fireworks are permissible here in the city of Keene. You've done that via ordinance. You can regulate as you see fit, is my understanding. Certainly, the city attorney's office can add value there if they feel necessary. But generally speaking, you can regulate up to not permitting fireworks of consumer nature in the city. So it is possible.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to make everyone aware right now, I did ask the clerk's office today if we could get copies of the application for permit. I didn't even know at the time, it's only a state application. Going through the city, you just have to write a letter and ask for permission.
So there's
So we all have the state application
We'll put it in
before
a
us.
couple different boxes, right? So we have the state application for display fireworks. That is the commercial fireworks display, right? So a licensed fireworks vendor would have to submit that. If they're doing display fireworks and more consumer fireworks, in theory, they don't have to, although commercial display always fills that out because they're licensed in their regulatory scheme. It's their normal course of business. So they apply to the state. We do have a sign-off as the fire department on that. The city also has a licensing requirement, right, under this particular regulation in Chapter 42, so they do have to come before this group to get permission. And that is made known to the state prior to the state's final approval for the display. So there is a couple of different processes, and then there's some regulatory elements that are embedded in the state fire code that we obviously look at. If it's before a proximate audience, meaning they're either inside a venue or in a much closer proximity than the normal, that's even a different level of scrutiny, and that requires state fire marshal on site. We do pre-shows where we actually have to have every device that's going to be displayed in front of that audience in close proximity actually displayed prior to them coming. So you do 2 shows, one for us to approve regulatory-wise, and then
Wow.
one for the consumer.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chief, did you want to add anything to that?
I was, just listening to what you said about non-commercial fireworks and they don't have, requirements for space cleared out below and such. And I guess my question was, are you aware of any safety-related incidents that have happened since we've essentially legalized them in our city? And is this, how's it going so far, I guess is my question.
If you're, and again, I've only been here since April, so I don't want to get too far out over my skis. I know that we had an ordinance that came into effect in March of last year, in '23. Chief, I'm not aware of any fireworks accidents, if you will. I don't know if we've had any fires related to fireworks discharge.
Chief, just give us your name and rank, please.
Jason Martin, Fire Chief, and to the best of my knowledge, we have not had any accidents or any injuries with consumer fireworks since March.
Chief, while you're there, can I ask you a question? On the non-permissible, when somebody has a display, you have, what comes out of committee is we tell them how many firefighters have to be on duty that night in that location and so on, and what is that usually?
Usually, it's the same detail for any show, and that's a brush truck with 3 personnel. And usually, if it's a commercial show, somebody from the fire marshal's office will be there while they're setting up. And then once the show starts, there'll be 3 people there, and then they will check the area afterwards to see if there's any fallout from any of the shells.
And we charge the applicant for those man-hours and equipment.
That is correct.
Thank you. Anyone have anything for the chief while he's up?
Not specific.
Okay, then wherever you.
Thank you, Chair. Could one of you clarify the difference between the class 1, 2, or 3 fire danger days? And what 4, 5, and 6 are? And also, while we're at it, what we recently went through earlier this month, or in November.
You want me to take that, or? Go ahead. Okay, so I would be remiss to try to actually explain the state's fire rating system. I will point you to their webpage and certainly, but I can give you kind of the overview, right? It is based on a variety of factors. It's based on the relative humidity that we're experiencing. It's based on wind speeds. It's based on turf conditions, that kind of stuff. Essentially what they're doing is they're trying to classify it into, is this a low hazard? Essentially a moderate hazard is a 3, a high is a 4, and an extra high is a 5. We just in the recent times went through a period where we had extremely dry conditions, low humidity, and quite a bit of wind. So we made a decision, which is authorized under RSA 22717, which is the forestry statute, to not have open burning during that period, trying to be preemptive. And if you followed what was going on around the region, we were probably pretty smart to do that.
I think so.
I'd just like to add, the state does monitor that every day, and they send the class 1, class 2 through 5 out every single day. So they're checking the weather all the time and keeping that updated.
Anyone else from the committee? Bobby?
Well, just to say that maybe it's a good idea that when we announce open burning, because it's a class 4 day or whatever, we could also announce, this would not be the time to launch non-commercial fireworks.
Good point.
Yes, I'm not sure we have anything in the regulation or in statute that would allow us to do that. What I would say is open burning is a term that certainly we would be out in front of in providing that information. This is, with the system that's in place currently, people apply for burn permits, so we have to have their data. If a consumer decides they want to go over to one of the fireworks stores that are in the region and purchase fireworks and have a fireworks show, we have no knowledge of that. And so it's difficult, but we could certainly add those kinds of things to the web announcement that we make on our webpage. But we did send out email communication to everybody who pulled the burn permit so that they knew if they had a permit, a seasonal permit in particular, that they were aware that they were not permitted to burn during that period.
Does it still work? When I used to have burn permits, like I used to get my yearly permit, but I had to call the fire department every time I was gonna have a burn that day. Do they still do it that way?
No, they don't, or no, we don't. If you have, you can just go onto the website, the state website, and if you have a seasonal permit, you can just look and go on the, and if we're allowing burning, you're good to go. And if somebody calls, then we can look up to make, for instance, if someone says 31 X Drive, they're burning in their backyard, we can look that up through the state website and see if there's a permit there before we go out and check it.
Okay,
And
thank you.
dispatch as well has that capacity, so they'll look it up right in the dispatch center.
We could make a phone call and say, and ask them if they're burning, please put it out, because there's been a state ban.
Thank you. Ed, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the direction we want to go in eventually is to somehow limit the number of fireworks events that happen in a neighborhood over the year, so no neighborhood gets excessively burdened with this. I'm not really sure how we do that in light of consumer being unregulated. And it will take a lot more imagination to craft proper ordinances around this, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So I think I'm putting that out as a challenge to all of us to come up with some good ideas along, as well as anything that you might suggest. I love the idea that you're going to advise when you send out the warning about no burning permitted, say no fireworks either. Of course, we're only getting to the people that have pulled permits, and you don't need to pull a permit to do a consumer fireworks show. Interesting challenge ahead for all of us.
Anyone else? We'll open to the public. Anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Please do.
So in talking with the city clerk earlier today, initially the motion recommended to council was to accept this as informational. There was some conversation back and forth between Councilor Bosley about looking at other locations for fireworks displays. And so I think that might in fact be what's on your your table in terms of a recommended motion. And I'm wondering if that's actually what you want. Because what I'm hearing in the conversation is more about limiting them in certain areas. And I think that when someone brings forward their, their license request, their application to do the commercial fireworks display, it could be in a variety of locations wherever they want to shoot them. It's not us telling them where to shoot them or saying that this is a pre-approved location to shoot them. So I guess it would be good if you're trying to decide what the motion is to sort of clarify that so we understand what it is you hope to accomplish.
Can I add on to that? I liked the idea of more time, but also for other reasons. And I was hoping to get together with staff to talk about another process, which would be educating about alternatives to fireworks. That we can let the public know are available. Things like laser light shows, things like drone shows, things like fountain shows. There's a lot of alternatives that are out there right now to fireworks. And some people just think fireworks off the top of their head, and they don't think about the alternatives. Just by letting the public know that those alternatives can also be available, especially when you're celebrating your wedding or something like that. It could be even better. And I would like to meet with staff to discuss some of that, besides just talk about locations.
So, Counselor, I'm happy to meet with you, and I'll drag Rebecca to the meeting. But I do think that it comes down to cost. The reason people often choose fireworks is it's less expensive than some of those other options you mentioned. And while I think we can offer those suggestions and say, did you know, instead of fireworks, you could do this.
Exactly.
And we
But-
can do that.
But you know what? The cost could go down because of the cost that the chief was telling us about with fireworks. That manpower isn't needed for those alternatives. Unless he tells us yes.
If I may, just don't lose sight of the fact that when we have drones flying in, this is a commercial venture now. It's not like you're on your own property. That requires additional regulatory oversight, and drones in crowd locations is somewhat problematic from a security perspective. So those are things that we'd want to make sure you wrap your head around as well. The other thing to keep in mind when you look at other locations, it's not just about, is this a good spot for fireworks, yes or no? It's what size fireworks, what type of show they want based on, and that dictates the site suitability. And those assessments are typically done by a commercial vendor prior to accepting the contract. So they'll let them know what size show will fit in this location. So having variety of locations is helpful, but trying to get certain shows in certain locations is much more problematic. My only concern from our perspective is just making sure that we create something that has a practicality to its enforcement. That's really where I'm focused, is because it becomes one of the reasons we have the regulation we have, I'm assuming, based on my experience throughout the state over the last several years with fireworks, is because the consumers want it. And so trying to figure out how we map that out in a way that is practical from an enforcement perspective is really challenging. So just make sure we have that in our vision, I guess, is what I would say.
So, City Manager, would you agree to still putting it on more time, but being open to other ideas besides locations?
Yeah, I mean, more time is fine. It would be helpful, though, if you do decide to do that, to tell us what it's for. So oftentimes, if we put something on more time, if we don't have some sort of directive, there's nothing that will be accomplished between now and the next PLD meeting. We need to really understand what it is you are looking for, to be able to come back with some additional information, unless you're just giving yourselves more time, which is another option.
Well, I would like to bring up some of the things I mentioned, and I think Rick brought up some good things that need to be mentioned also by staff. And I think Bobby's got something too.
Well, just to say that, yeah, I think I do need more time. I mean, this information that we're really looking at, a combination of permissible and not permissible fireworks, I would like to put a cap on the number of fireworks shows at any one location, but if we only cap the permissible fireworks, or we only cap the commercial fireworks, and we're just gonna get a bunch of, smaller ones. I need to noodle that one over to think about,
Yeah.
maybe, what are some options there?
Well, it's a good time of year, so it's not time sensitive, yeah.
Yeah. So, Counselor, if I may, maybe what we could do is have a meeting if the PLD committee is okay with having you and maybe Counselor Williams meet with myself, Rebecca, the fire chief, and the fire marshal, and the assistant city attorney, to discuss sort of what the options are and see if there's something that you can come out of that meeting with in terms of, a recommendation for the next meeting.
Well, thank you. Anyone else?
Need a motion?
Because we're still going to put on more time, yes, so. I entertain a motion.
I would move that we put consideration of fireworks regulations on more time so we can
Nice.
develop alternatives.
No, second.
There's a motion second on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yep.
Opposed? Motion carries. This will go on more time. Item number 2. This is the sign code modification requested by Mayor Khan. That was for the blade signs in the industrial area. I believe Mayor Khan wants us to do it when he can be here, so he's asked us to put this on more time.
You need a motion?
Well, it's on the agenda, so we still have to open it to the public. Any public wish to speak to this? If not, we can do a motion. Yes, sir.
Move to place the item of sign code modifications requested by Mayor Khan on more time.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We look forward to doing that with the mayor. Item number 3, relating to amendments to the City of Keene Land Development Code definition of charitable gaming facility. Ordinance O 2023-16C. And I believe Mary's going to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. I'm Mary Brenner, Senior Planner, and I know you're all very familiar with this ordinance, so I'm not going to go through it again. But this ordinance has now gone through 3 iterations of the workshop process and the public hearing process. So there's been 3 public workshops, 3 public hearings. It's gone through a variety of changes. It started out as just a proposal to allow charitable gaming facilities in the commerce and downtown growth districts, and now it's morphed into allowing it in commerce only with a number of limitations. And then in addition, there's a component of this ordinance that would remove drive-through uses as being allowed in the downtown core with a special exception. And I'm happy to go into any details if you'd like me to. I just didn't want to rehash that since you've heard it multiple times.
Anyone from the committee have any questions? Please.
Thank you, Chair. Just curious, where are we in the process?
So right now, the 3rd public hearing was just held. And so it's now with the PLD committee to review. And at this time, there's a kind of a companion ordinance that's sort of come off the table because that ordinance is proposing to update the definition section of the Land Development Code, which is not in zoning. So one of these ordinances had to go through the zoning amendment process, and the other one just has to go through a standard city council ordinance process. So if you're ready to make a recommendation on this ordinance tonight, then we would also ask you to make a recommendation on the other companion ordinance related to the definition of charitable gaming facility. And we also added, that one also got modified to add a definition for gaming position because that's what the parking requirement is based off of.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mary. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to open this up to the public. Just so it's on the record that we did open it to the public.
Actually, yeah, this
Yeah, this doesn't get a, that's right, this had a, because this was a zoning ordinance, the public can't speak anyway. With that being said, if there's any other comments, questions, if not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance O 2023-16C.
Is there a
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion,
One thing on my part.
please do, Andrew.
I just want to thank city staff's work on all this, and I'm sorry for how long it's taken. My hope is that next Thursday, we can finalize this and that there's not going to be any 11th hour, oh, well, you know, now that we've been talking about this for 2 years, I want to do this. I hope that we can move this forward, because this has taken way too long.
For my 2 cents, as you all know, I've been opposed to this from the very beginning. I didn't think we should be singling out this one entity. I think it should be considered part of entertainment, just like a bowling alley would be, or an arcade, or a theater, or anything like that. So I will be voting no on this recommendation. Are you ready to take a vote? All those in favor? 3 in favor, opposed? Just the vice chair opposes. This recommendation will go to full city council. We're ready for number 4. Relating to amendments to the Land Development Code definition of gaming facilities. Mary?
Thank you, Counselor. So this is the companion ordinance I was just mentioning. So basically, this ordinance would establish the same definition that in the ordinance that was just discussed. But this is in the definition section of the Land Development Code, and it also includes a definition for gaming position.
Any questions, any comments? Please do.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make the point that these definitions are all in accordance with state regulations and state legislation, so we're not doing anything odd here. Thank you.
Was that a yes?
Sorry, was that a question?
That was a statement to be disagreed with, but I take it that everybody, that is the case.
Yes,
That's my
I-
understanding of it. That's question?
That's my understanding as well. I believe our definition specifically exempts like nonprofit type bingo halls. So like if you are a church or a nonprofit entity that's doing like an occasional bingo to raise money, that doesn't really fall under this definition.
Right.
This is more for commercial operations.
Yeah, we were more clear on those items.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I would entertain a motion. Andrew, you want?
Sure. Move to adopt ordinance O 2023-17B.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
We have a motion second, discussion. As I just stated, it was the definition in the past ordinance, so I'll stick with myself and be against the definition, so I'll be voting no. Other than that, all in favor? We have 3 in favor, opposed? The vice chair votes no. This recommendation will go to the full city council. Item number 5, related to the development of Class 6 highways and private roads, Resolution R 2024-43. And I believe Mary's going to take this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a policy or a draft resolution that was in response to a request from City Council when you rescinded your previous resolution related to development on Class 6 highways. I believe that was like R 2028, something like that. But that resolution basically stated that no development was allowed, so it took a 2/3 vote of City Council to suspend that in order to consider requests for development on a Class 6 road. So the City Council, you rescinded that. and directed staff to come up with a new policy or resolution to provide guidance when an applicant comes to you under that state statute, which is 67441. So what I've drafted is really just from brainstorming with former Director Rounds about what might be some good criteria to consider. The first criteria that we're recommending is that the proposed development is consistent with either the existing development pattern or the desired development pattern. And the desired development pattern would be based on the future land use section of the adopted master plan, and the established development pattern would be based on the development pattern that exists on properties that directly abut and properties within 200 feet. So that's the first criteria. And the reason for this one, we were sort of talking about the different situations where you might have a private road or a Class 6 highway in Keene. Like some of the Class 6 highways are out in very remote rural areas, but we can also have like a private road in the middle of a downtown district. So I think if you're going to be looking at these on a case-by-case basis, which is quite frankly what the statute requires, this gives you the ability to say, okay, in this situation, you're in the middle of a developed area, there's utilities, street, everything is there to support this development, it matches the development around it, great. But if it's off in some remote corner of the rural district and it would be very, very difficult for the city to provide services to that area, you could take that into account with this criteria. So that's the first one that we proposed. The second one is that the proposed development will be established, maintained, and operated so as to not endanger public health, safety, or welfare. I actually borrowed that, I'll say, from the, I believe it was from one of the special exception criteria that we have in our zoning regulations. So I figured that's something that we've already used elsewhere in the code, and that's been working well. This is another criteria that you can use to evaluate projects. And the third one is that the proposed development will not place an excessive burden on public improvements, facilities, services, or utilities. And then the final one is that all requirements of New Hampshire Revised Statute annotated 67441 shall be met. I'm not going to necessarily read through all of that, but in the state statute, it requires things like the property owner has to agree that the municipality is not liable for maintenance, and they have to, there's all these different requirements basically trying to protect the municipality from having to take over the road and turn it back into a Class 5 road, or into a Class 5 road if it was never a Class 5 road. So yeah, that's, the last one may be unnecessary because it's already required in state statute, but I thought it might be a good idea to just have that reminder in there, so that if somebody's looking at just this policy, it will kind of prompt them to look at the state statute and the requirements that are in there. Happy to
just
answer any
for-
questions.
Just for the public's sake, does the private road need to meet city standards?
No, so there's no definition of what a private road is, but the city of Keene has a list of roads that are considered to be private roads versus just an easement. And so we would basically just use that list, but many of those roads were never built to our current, or even then current, road standards. If at this point in time, if someone were to build a new private road, it would have to meet our standards for building a road.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just for clarity, we're only dealing, with this resolution is only dealing with Class 6. At the Joint Committee on More Time, we're going to be dealing with more private roads. Interesting.
Class 6 or private road.
Yeah, this
Class
this
6 or
deals with Class 6 and private roads. Under the state statute, they added in private roads at a later date. So when the city council first adopted that other policy that I mentioned that was recently rescinded, At the time that city council had adopted that original policy, the state statute only dealt with Class 6 highways. And then at a later date, they added in private roads. And so that was one of the issues that came up recently, because we have private roads in our built-up area of the city where development might be appropriate. But because the city council had this policy that required a 2/3 vote to suspend it in order to consider requests, it made it very difficult for that process. So this does include private roads. And again, we have a lot of existing private roads in the city that were not built necessarily to our public improvement standards.
But there is still a difference between this and what's on more time at joint committee.
Yes, I think what's on time at the joint committee is whether or not we want to allow moving forward for new private roads to be built. Right now, it would require a variance.
That makes it clear. Thank you. Anyone else have questions or comments? I think this is something good. I think this is just another tool as we're looking to develop new housing within the city. So I really like this, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay.
Anyone else?
That's me.
Andrew, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to agree with Counselor Jones. I think this is a pretty common sense solution to, it's another tool in our toolbox for dealing with the housing crisis. And this kind of resolves some minor problems we were having that were preventing housing from being built or utilized. So thank you for your efforts with this, and this is pretty common sense. It's a good job.
Thank you. And with that, Ed, please.
Yes, I move to adopt resolution R 2024-43.
I second.
Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Mary. Okay, item number 6. Rules of Order, Section 15, Voting and Conflict of Interest. This is from the city attorney. We have 2 recommended motions that we can choose from, or you can choose to write your own. Are we going to add to this or speak to this?
There's nothing from my office to contribute to this. This is largely an effort through the mayor. This draft that you have is something Tom, our city attorney, punched up at the mayor's request. So we have no commentary. It's our understanding that the mayor is the one that would like to speak to this primarily, or could explain more why it's in this state.
Okay, Andrew, please.
So this is the motion that the mayor brought back for reconsideration.
That's right. It isn't a different, there's new language here.
Okay.
It's, my understanding, it's modeled after the state statute, and that's not something that's been, that's not the direction you had before. Yeah.
Okay, and the mayor had set for a meeting of the council, wasn't it in January? And this would be part of that discussion,
The
correct?
workshop,
The workshop, yes.
you could absolutely bring it up. The shape of what that workshop's gonna look like is TBD at this point. It's fully driven by the council. If you wanna take it up in this form, you wanna take it up in another form, you can have it however you want.
Well, there you go, Cal.
I will say, this is currently an item that exists on your agenda. It's a city council item, so how you want to either direct it there or do something with it now should be thought about.
Okay, Bobby, please.
The language has changed quite a bit, and we actually had Councilor Haas and I had a discussion with Councilor Lake about a potential comma change. And it seems like the whole thing needs to be discussed a bit more, and if the mayor is the advocate for this, then I think he should be here to have that discussion. So I think we should put it on more time.
Anyone else? Andrew, please.
I have to agree with Counselor Williams. This was the mayor's prerogative to bring it back to the council, so he should be the one to address it before the committee. So I would share Counselor Williams' sentiment to put it on more time.
I agree with that concept also. This was agendized. Ed, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to point out the item that we might have concern with is in the last paragraph. The paragraph begins, "The mayor and councilor shall file." On the 1, 2, 3, 4th line, that reading, "The person's employer, comma, and any board, commission, organization." We need to clarify what type of logical operator that "and" is supposed to be. Given that it's an "and," if it could mean that both parts need to be true. With the comma there, it somewhat confuses it. The comma suggests that that's actually an "or" statement. So I would ask that before we go further, at least city attorney consider which way that is meant to be.
If we're going to put on more time, we could ask city staff to
Yep.
address that
I would just
at the
keep
time.
that, that's a
Keep
key
that in mind.
point. That makes a big change in the last paragraph. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just to say, I would recommend getting in touch with Councilor Lake for that discussion, because he could explain it a lot better than we can.
Thank you.
This was noticed on
Happy
the
to
agenda,
improve.
so we should open it to the public. Anyone from the public wish to speak? We got it on record that we opened it to the public. Okay, public session is closed. Any other discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to place the item Rules of Order, Section 15, Voting and Conflicts of Interest on more time.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. This will go on more time. Having no other business before us, I believe we are adjourned.